Peter, I'll start. I just wanted to get your initial thoughts on hearing that IFAB was considering a 5-sub rule going into whenever the season does start. How do you feel about that? Is it something that you're a fan of? And then after, an unusual season in 2020, hopefully, would you be for or against keeping that rule going forward?
I think it's something that we were already contemplating here in our league. So it's great to know that they were thinking the same, because it's for sure for the safety of players. Normally speaking, I would probably say no, but because we'd get a real firsthand feel for the implementation of it, obviously I'd be very open till after seeing what it was like. I do think that one of the things about soccer is that less substitutions has also made for a lot of times less, or it's kept the continuity of the game. It's kept that rhythm. When you see college soccer where there's unlimited substitutions, other than when the guy has to re-enter in the second half, things like that, where you see club soccer, where I understand why you do it, the game loses rhythm. That would be my only concern.
Peter, let's just talk about an update on you and your team right now. Earlier, we talked about how guys were trying to keep in shape, but that was a couple weeks ago, and this has gone on longer. So can you tell us how often you've been in touch with them, what kind of feedback you're getting from them, the challenges that they've been overcoming through, just not staying game ready, obviously, but at least just staying in some kind of shape?
So we've been looking at this in 2-week increments as we've gone into this moratorium, if you will. And the way we've taken it is that, for example, we had the first week coming out, we created it more like an unloading week. And then we had a couple weeks in a row that were heavy weeks in the way that we were training with the guys. And Joey Hardy and Alfonso Thompson, our fitness coaches, they were leading the charge on that with at least 2 Zoom calls a week, which were 6 to 8 guys training on Zoom together to do 2 things. One is to actually run them through a program where Joey was or Alfonso was instructing it. And then the other was the camaraderie aspect of it. So there was 2 of those, and usually there's 1 yoga session a week. And then there's other individual things that they have to do on those other days. And so we have weeks that are loading weeks where they're really heavy, and then we have unloading weeks that are kind of taking them off that. The bottom line is that we've been trying to keep them a good level of basic fitness, if you will, because that's going to be, to me, I've said this before, it's going to be the most important aspect of us returning to play. It's not going to be soccer as much. It's going to be how can we get fit quickly to be able to play that we want to play. Communication remains the same. It's sometimes phone calls and then sometimes Zoom calls such as this with the whole team. These are a little more difficult with the guys just because I think they're used to dealing with me probably more on an individual basis, especially, a lot of times when I'm talking to them in a group, there's not a lot of, it's not usually a conversation, not because I keep it that way. It's just I'm usually informing them about something, and then we move on to the next thing. And if I have to make an adjustment to somebody, it's usually one-on-one. And obviously we're not training, so that's the difficulty. But I'm also trying to be respectful, because even during the season, I don't want to be old to the guys where I'm talking to them all the time. I want to keep my freshness with them, and I'm trying to give them a little bit of space in this time as well.
Hey, Peter, I know that the news is a couple weeks old now, but, with the closing of the DA, you've said that you want the youth development in this country to take the next step. What does that entail? What can the new league do to pick up where the DA left off?
Well, I think MLS taking the step first to make the announcement that they want to be the leader in that space is an important one, because there's nobody right now that's investing more money into player development than MLS is. And so for us to lead that space, it only makes sense. I also think that, we have to be very careful, because I would say that there were some really good things that came out of the DA, and there's also some things that were done poorly. And hopefully we're going to learn from those things that were done poorly, and we're going to expand upon them. what I would say is that it's not just about the MLS academies only. It's also about the non-MLS academies. That's what I call the standalone youth clubs. They also need guidance and assistance. Not that they don't have good directors in their clubs, but I think our country is due for a leader in this space that works with all the groups in a very collaborative manner, which I don't think has taken place in the way that it should have. There's been too much dictation, and also I think at times unrealistic terms or standards set. It's hard to expect certain clubs to pay for everything. It's not feasible. They have to generate too much revenue, which is not part of their model. So I just think there has to be a different way of laying this out. I also think that MLS, the MLS academies, also have to make sure that we ensure that we continue to have challenging competitions that optimize the potential that we have in our clubs. And that would also include international competition as well for some of our younger groups. So those are all things that have to take place. Do I think it's feasible? Absolutely. I also don't think that MLS has to be the fastest to the table with the plan. We have to be the group that comes to the table with the best plan. And so I don't think trying to be really quick about putting something together should be our goal. It's about quality, and it's about high level competition for all the groups, not just MLS academies.
Now that you put a sport director hat on you, my question is, how big was how economically affect this situation to the team, and if it's gonna affect the contract with the players? MLS released the information that maybe by first week of June it may open MLS again, and it creates some kind of economical crisis in MLS, like any other business. How it affects Spring KC?
Yeah. So look, obviously we all know that this situation has affected global economy, and Sporting Kansas City or MLS are not immune to that. I think we do have something that we can at least hang our hat on. We have incredibly stable ownership groups in this league. And I don't think any of them ever got in for the short term. I think all of them have gotten in for the long term. And I would probably make the example like the stock market. If you look at the stock market over its history, there's definitely times of downturn, but it always seems to not only return, but always surpass that and get stronger. And I feel the same thing will happen with MLS. In regards to the players, I think they are as motivated, if not more than all of us, in that they want to get back on the field as soon as possible. I know that there are negotiations going on between the league and the players, but I'm not privy to those. I know that they're happening, but I know just about as much as you do. So it's not really a space that I would comment too much more on, just because I don't have any info. But I'm very confident that we will navigate this environment, and I truly believe that at some point we'll be stronger than ever.
Coming back to the coach hat, and now what's we learn for this unique experience in terms of physical training? It's better for the players to continue training during those times, taking the precautions, or it's better for them to isolate and wait for the better time to train? What is the psychologically point? What is the best way for if something happen again?
Yeah, I think every market's different. So, obviously I live here as well, and I walk around. I go out work maybe for a jog or what have you. Nearby my house, there's a golf course. I'm amazed. The parking lot's completely full. The driving range is completely full. People are on the putting greens and they're chipping everywhere. So I think our environment is a little bit different than, let's just compare it to New York, for example. We're different. I think the other thing you have to take in consideration that an athlete's profession is different than if you're in journalism, if you're in the marketing department of a company, because one of the biggest assets that they have to have is they have to be physically prepared to be able to do their profession. And so there's just no way that, well, I guess there is a way. They could be lazy and not do anything for sure. But I think the guys on our team and most of the teams and most of the athletes around the world, they're in it because they are professional and they understand that they have to stay fit for themselves. And so I believe that they're very creative, very innovative. And I also think there's a lot of different things today that you didn't have 20 years ago. And so I think that they've done a really good job. I think our staff has done an excellent job in keeping them connected. And so I feel very assured that we have taken all the precautions necessary to make sure our guys are in a good place. The only thing that I would suggest is at times there has to be common sense that also has to be aligned with some of this stuff, because there are some things that I still believe that we could do with them that is probably more safe than if they were just kind of out on their own doing things amongst the public. But that's my opinion.
Peter, let's take a little trip down memory lane here. Can't believe it's almost been a decade since the Manchester United KC Wizards friendly. When you look back on that game, and we just talked with Davey Arno on the Sporting KC show last night about that and how big of a role it had in really kind of launching this next generation with Sporting Kansas City and the rebrand. When you look back on that game, how impactful was it in legitimizing soccer in Kansas City?
Well, first is I'm 1-0 against Sir Alex Ferguson, so that's a great thing. Now, on a serious note, yes, it actually was. It was a watershed moment, because I think that day a lot of people came out to watch that game that really weren't Kansas City Wizards fans at that time, and I think they walked away saying, "Hey, this is pretty cool." And obviously, the best was yet to come when we entered Children's Mercy Park. And so it was a great opportunity to catch a group of fans that weren't supporting us, number one, and also gave them sort of a look ahead or a look forward of what could be. And so, yeah, I believe it was a watershed moment, and Davey was lucky he scored that day.
Hey, Peter, let me ask you about Alan Pulido. He's a new guy in the team. He started the season so well, but he's new to the league, new to the country. How is he coping with this situation? What do you get from him?
Well, I think it would be really difficult if we're the only country dealing with this and now he came here, right? But since everywhere it's the same, it's a little bit, it's just easier for guys to accept, I think, that, hey, this is what the rest of the world is doing. So I think that part is easy. I think that any player, especially him, and I would say most of our guys, but he came to the league new. He wanted to make an impression. As you pointed out, he made a very good impression to start off the first two games. And you want that rhythm to continue, especially as being a goal scorer, because it's all about, getting into that groove. And so I think for him, obviously it's a little disappointing that we had to stop, but I think we also realized that the situation is much bigger than us and also our game. And it's important to get over this piece first. And one thing I can say about Alan is that he's a winner. He's a guy that fights for the team. And because he does that, he always puts himself in a position to play well. And so I obviously it's disappointing, but I don't think you'll see anything different when we return to play.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Peter, bringing it back around to kind of the club's recruitment strategy, can you tell me about what's going on right now? What's the status of player recruitment, international scouting? Are you guys watching film on targets, finding new targets?
Yeah, that never stops. It doesn't matter if it's COVID-19 or anything. I'm pretty amazed at the number of players I've been presented. And it's funny how this continues to stretch out. I keep getting more and more. So I think it's telling you that people are starting to relax and, feeling like we're coming out of this probably is a better way to say it. So yeah, we continuously do that. It's interesting too. The stoppage has also allowed us to look at ourselves internally even more in so many different ways. Obviously the first one is financially, but outside of that, I think everybody would assume that. But there's so many other things that we're looking down the road on: number of teams, competitions we're playing in, which kids are making the next jump up within our system. It's just giving us a chance to hit a pause button and really take a deep dive into all the things that we have going on.
Hello, Peter. Salvador Perez from Goal.com in Mexico. I would like to ask you, what do you think about the position in Mexico of a league for 2026 in 5-6 years? The position of Mexican league with the MLS, and the second question to ask you about Alan Pulido, his development at Sporting Kansas City, and if Sporting Kansas City would like to search for another Mexican player, not only at MLS, at Liga MX or at Europe.
Your first question, there has been different, or I should say there's been many times that the topic of sort of a connection between Liga MX and MLS in the future. And there's no doubt that would be a powerful brand in the marketplace. There's no doubt. I also think that there could be some real synergies between the two leagues, such as you can see when, we're trying now the Leagues Cup, if you will. And you see that there's a lot of interest in that. But I think the potential for that to grow and get bigger is definitely something that I think all of us see the potential of. So I would say that yes. Unfortunately, I think probably COVID-19 would probably slow the process down a little bit. But once we come out of this, I do think it's going to be a topic of discussion, because it's something that I know it would be exciting, I think, for both leagues, for sure. The other piece is, you talk about Alan, and I'll state it again. I think Alan has a fantastic attitude, and he has a very strong mentality. And it's one of the reasons why that we are so interested in him, because we felt that he would fit very well into our club, the way we play, and then what our expectations are of a player in that position. And I believe that, I know it's only 2 games, but if you take preseason and what he did in the first 2 games, he's already surpassed those expectations. So we're very happy with him. He's a fantastic guy that has also adapted personality-wise to the culture of the club and the team. And that has made his transition very quickly. And the final piece is that whenever we're recruiting or trying to bring players in, there's a lot of different characteristics that we're looking for. And so it's not necessarily that we look at every country in the world. We have very specific countries that we look at, because we think that either the way they play in that country fits us, or the mentality of the players from that country fit us. And Mexico for sure is in that group of countries that we look at.
Sorry, Peter. In the case about Mexican League and MLS, having the Mexican League in the future with MLS, like partnership, like an alliance, can benefit MLS, or nothing like that?
Absolutely. I think an alliance between the two would benefit both, because I always think that at some point you get to a cap, you get to a top, and now all of a sudden you start to do things together. You can be extremely innovative, and there's a lot more that you can bring from a competition point of view, which I also think would help to develop our talent in our countries even faster at a much more accelerated pace. So I think all of those things would be positives if there was an alliance in the future.
Hey, Peter, this is Karen. I know you've touched on a lot of different things about what you guys will need preseason-wise to come back and whatever, but when you look at the leagues like baseball, and they're trying to keep travel down and form different leagues, is there anything that you could envision that maybe hasn't been talked about to centralize more play without long trips and things like that, just to kind of get things started in, as the country slowly tries to reopen.
So we presented a plan to the league, Sporting Kansas City has, in that, and don't get me wrong, it's kind of a collaboration. The league has thought about it as well, in that we think that there's a possibility, to your point, that there are some cities that are a lot more open than others and will become open quicker than others. And so, if you had to wait for all 26 cities to open up, you could be waiting for a long time. And then what does that mean when you say they opened up, and what can you do? So we've talked about the possibility of having 1, 2, 3, 4 locations that you could have. You could aggregate a number of teams in each of those locations, and then you could actually play games that would count towards league play. That would be more of a tournament style. And as you're doing that over a certain number of weeks, then other cities may open up, and then you could start to go back to your home cities after that. So it's definitely something that is on the front burner at the moment, and has a lot of legs in discussion and possibly implementation as well. But you also have to realize that you'd be moving mountains to make that happen. There'd be a lot of logistics. So there's a lot of people working behind the scenes to see if that could really actually happen. I like to think it could.
Hey, Coach. Robert Remsen with Fox 4 KC. Have you been keeping up with Sporting's EMLS team at all, or what kind of thoughts do you have on that? You guys are doing pretty good in the esports area. Yeah,
so Kuz is in the final. I know that. I heard that he also was on something and said that he didn't know if I was a gamer, but he said that if I was, I'd be really good. And that was a great answer by him. I'm not a gamer, but it's funny because I could see Kuz being good because I think he's a really smart technical player on the field. So I could also see him being actually a really good gamer because I think some of those qualities translate. Outside of that, I couldn't tell you anything else. I'm completely outside of that world.
Hi, Coach. Thanks for taking the time. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the communication, if any, with any other coaches in the league, and the amount of time that you guys are going to need for a sort of a preseason. Some are talking of 3 weeks, some other 4 weeks, and that's one part of it. And also related to coaches, do you talk to anybody outside of the United States to see what they're doing, maybe in Germany, any other place? Thanks.
Yeah, so I'll go backwards. So yeah, I actually have connected with some people in the Bundesliga that I know because I know that they were getting back to return to training, and I wanted to see. But it's interesting there because since we're a single entity group, our business model, and they are individually owned teams, it's completely different. All the teams are doing things differently based on what they feel is best. Here, it's good to know, though. Don't get me wrong. It's good to know those things that they are doing. So for sure, we're using some of that information. Your other question, I can't remember, so you have to refresh my memory.
Yeah, it was just about communication with other coaches within the league in terms of preseason, how long it could be, so that you guys are on the same page. Thanks.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of other. So we call the person that makes all the soccer decisions in the league the CSO, the Chief Soccer Officer in our league. So I speak to all the Chief Soccer Officers almost on a daily basis. I speak to a few coaches here and there. I think for all of us, our biggest thing is that we're all preparing for the individual workout sessions that we'd probably open up with first, and then progress to small group trainings, and then eventually full team training. And so I think right now all of us are focused on the individual workouts at the moment, and hopefully that will come sooner than later.
Hey, Peter, really quickly, back to your plan that you proposed as far as potentially phasing back in. Where did fans play a role in that plan, or did you even think, did you include them at all?
Are you talking about the one where it's kind of like a tournament style idea?
Either,
really.
Either.
Okay.
Where in general you see them?
So I like to think that I have a lot of power and I can make that decision, but I don't. It's going to be more of a league. And I think it goes back to the individual state and local government's decision on what you can and can't do in, large gatherings. And I think every single city's gonna or club is gonna have to follow those recommendations by their city. But I know that there's been some innovative things to be thought about if you were to play with no fans. Maybe you turn it in kind of into a virtual, almost like a virtual sideline, but all the way around the field. That would be pretty interesting while the game's going on, but I don't know what that would look like, but I've heard some discussions around it. So I'm sure there's a lot of innovative stuff going on in that regard.
Peter, Sporting Kansas City is in the first place of the Western Conference. There were only two games, we know, but for the start of the season, this is what you expected for Sporting Kansas City, or less.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I expected us to be a competitive team. I felt very good about how we were trending forward. What you always get a really good feel is like day 1 and day 2 of preseason, because what you see what the guys did in the off season. And so what the guys came back in off season, the way that they had prepared themselves was very responsible, very high level professional capacity. And so I was very, very happy with that. And it did nothing but give us a great platform to build off of in preseason. And, we opened up really strong and competitive, I would say. So, and I expect the same thing to happen when we come out of this.
Now that he mentioned it, the first 2 games we saw there was a difference, a new strategy, new X and O's since Alan Pulido's here, which is something that is trained during the week. So they need some coordination to make that possible. This 4-3-3 was improved from the last year, and it works. Now with this stop, with this quarantine, how do you work those X and O's? Is watching videos together, or?
No, to me that's a difficult thing to do. It's very in this time sitting like this and trying to watch a video and discussing it. It's not the same when you are next to each other, or step out in the field, or get on the board and work something out. I think the soccer piece, the model of play, the way we play, to me is the easier piece to come back to. It's the question of you have to be able to physically meet the demands of how you want to play. And so it's that physical component that's going to be, to me, the biggest hurdle we have to overcome early on. I feel good about the other piece. I feel that we'll be able to get the guys back into rhythm of play and the way we want to play. I don't think they're going to forget all of it. We'll have to do some reminders. The technical piece will come with daily activity, but it's the physical aspect that's going to have to be the foundation of everything.